Peter Marks has taught as an academic program instructor from the University of Toronto. He has over 35 years of human and health services organization and leadership development to facilitate effective, conscious, and compassionate care and support. So let's give him a warm welcome for Peter.
I sometimes add a couple of other things to my bio. How many here have heard of Leonard Cohen? Let me show of hands. Leonard Cohen's? Okay, all right, great. One of Canada's best musicians. Well, one of my backgrounds is that I actually sang backup for Leonard. Now, it's not quite like you might think. It wasn't on the stage and it wasn't on tour or in the studio, but I did. So it turns out that my mindfulness coach and facilitator is the same as his. And when he was alive, he would turn his little house in Montreal to a 12 or 15 person retreat center. So I would get to go on these retreats, and these were like 7-day retreats, 18 hours a day doing mindfulness, start at 3 a.m., and we chanted for an hour, right? And Leonard, with his great voice, always chanted in the front row, and me with a lousy singer chanted in the back row. So that's kind of like singing back up to Leonard Cohen, right? A bit, anyway. A bit. The other part of my bio I put on as a bit of a warning. Leah pulls me back when I get too nerdy, but in another lifetime, I was designing jumbo jets for McDonnell Douglas Aircraft, and investigate a few airplane crashes as well. So that was like a long time ago. My initial training is in metallurgical engineering. So I bring that up because I never lost my passion for the hard sciences. When I came into the human health services field, which I've been in now for about 30 plus years, I just always really relied heavily on the sciences. So what you're going to hear today is backed up by the best science that's available, and it's as current as it gets. Suggest here's a nasty truth that needs to be received as a serious warning to every person who wants to live their life to their fullest mind, body, and spiritual potential, aka happiness. Being satisfied with happiness coming from mainly doing, getting, having, bigger, better, more, that's just not good enough. Those comforts and those Facebook likes and all that, they're not going to hold us. More and more, they just deliver less than what's promised. Many people also still do not incorporate even great ideas from books or podcasts or counselors, whoever that they hear from. They just don't incorporate them in. This afternoon's about how to get incorporating more in, okay? So when we talk about this chemistry factory, just see if you relate to this quote. The following quote gives an example of some of the human predicament that is preventing most people from living anywhere near our full potential for happiness, emotional self-regulation, and contributing in meaningful ways to the lives of others. For virtually any task beyond your here and now, your brain, this is well-substantiated research, your brain depends on a single molecule of a chemical. Listen to that. This chemical makes you desire what you don't have, and yet drives you to seek new things. It rewards you when you obey it and makes you suffer when you don't. It is the source of creativity and, further along the spectrum, madness. It is the key to addiction and the path to recovery. It is the bit of biology that makes an ambitious executive sacrifice everything in pursuit of happiness, that makes successful actors, entrepreneurs, and artists keep working well after they have all the money and fame that they dreamed of, and that makes a satisfied husband or wife risk everything for the thrill of someone else. It is the source of the undeniable itch that drives scientists to define explanations and philosophers to find order, reason, and meaning. It is the fuel for the motor of our dreams. It is the source of our despair. When we fail, it is why we seek and succeed. It is why we discover and prosper. It also is why we are never, never happy very long. To your brain, this single molecule is the ultimate multi-purpose device, urging us through thousands of neurochemical processes to move beyond the pleasure of just being into exploring the universe of possibilities that come when we imagine. It is a blessing and a curse, a motivation and a reward. It is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, plus one single atom of nitrogen. It is simple in form and complex in results. This is dopamine, and it narrates no less than the story of human behavior. That one chemical is complemented by numerous other chemicals, the neurotransmitters, the norepinephrines, the serotonins, the GABAs, all of it. And that's running around in what I'm calling this chemical factory. And if we do not work the way we're going to show you this afternoon, we will not be able to manage that chemical factory, and it will continue to manage us. It's the reason why we see just so many suffering people, right? So here's the workshop I want you to participate in with me. This has been done with tens of thousands of people, and this is quite revealing when done. Here is what's happening. You are in a train station, and there is a train coming down the tracks, and that train is out of control. If it keeps on going where it's going, it will kill 4 people. But you're at the switch over there, and if you throw that switch, it will take that train off to a side and only kill 1 person. I'd like you now to take about a minute at your tables and decide whether you'd throw the switch or not. Now, this is not a problem-solving exercise. Many people have been through this, and I'm going to give you some very interesting results at the end of it. So just talk amongst yourself. Would you throw the switch? The science basically says about 90% of you would throw. Give me a show of hands. What's this group like? Put your hand up if you would throw the switch. Okay, looks like we got around 90% or thereabouts. Okay. Now give me some reasons, one of you or 2 of you, why would you throw the switch? Like, why would you do that? Yes?
Save 4 people instead of 1.
Right on. It's basically a math problem, right? I mean, you don't want to do it, but it's a math problem. So Act 2 of this tragic play goes like this. You are now not at a switch, but you are in a water tower over top of the tracks. And there's a person in front of you. If you push that person to their death, their body will derail the train and save the 4 people. Well, you don't need a minute, do you? Anybody gonna do the push? No. Once again, it took no more than 60 seconds for this math problem to be obliterated. No longer could a math problem hold all the logic that you had used to make that big decision on turning the switch. So what happened? So here's what happened. The you who's listening to me, in the first scenario, the part of your brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, it's the working memory, some logical stuff happening there. When you were asked that first question, it was pretty impersonal. It's just, I'm on a switch and whatever. And so your brain, not you, you had nothing to do with this decision, by the way. Like nothing. The way your medial prefrontal cortex is right now designed brings you to a certain way of responding to this question. So you typically, like most, would say, yes, I'm going to throw the switch. And that was in that part of the brain. Now, this is done in functional MRI, by the way, when they're doing this in test subjects. All around the world, they've done this. And what they find in MRI is this. When you're asked that second question, it's suggested because our herding mentality, a very deep part of our hardware, the chemical factory, decides that the closer that we get to hurting a member of our herd is less and less going to happen. We go into a different part of the brain, a total different part of the brain, which is that medial prefrontal cortex. And we all have this. So what does it do? Just look at this. This is what your brain, your medial prefrontal cortex, as it is right now, does, all right? Body regulations, kind of emotional brakes or accelerators, okay, that's a part of it. Okay, attuned communications involves the coordination of the input from another person to another, kind of that whole thing around mirror neurons. I don't know if you know about that, but the calm makes calm and fear makes fear. That's mirror neuron stuff, okay? And emotional balance, to have enough activation so that the life has meaning and vitality, but not become overwhelming. This is everything that this part of your brain does, okay? This is response flexibility. It's the capacity to pause before taking action. Empathy, knowing what might be going on in someone else. Knowing insights, awareness to be able to link the past, present, and future. Fear modulation that may be carried out by the release of these calming neurotransmitters, GABA, serotonin, and those. And then intuition even. This is the source of our intuition. Neurochemistry by which we process deep ways and even somatic intelligence. This afternoon we're going to talk a fair bit about somatic intelligence. That's the body. This is the body keeps the score in a lot of our emotional well-being. And finally, it's even suggested even morality. That's what this part of our brain is responsible for. And when we do some of what we're going to do after break today, we actually grow that part of our brain. I'm going to show you some other pieces of research that if we develop this part of our brain, which we can, I'm going to teach you after break about a particular specific form of mindfulness, researched significantly. When you practice this, every 5 minutes of this mindfulness that we're going to teach you today grows neuron cells in this part of your brain, which makes you more and more and more able to be in a quality of life with this, okay? So just a summary there then, the you who was listening to me did not make that choice to push or to pull. Now, this is kind of a summary slide just showing us. This is every human being on the planet. Put this chemical factory, if you will, into this 3 levels. I'm talking about PFP, brain, right? The first part of the brain is these primitive predispositions, the chemical factory. All of those, literally thousands. I mean, just one molecule of nitrogen, the changes that it makes in us. It's incredible that creates the neurotransmitter called dopamine, right? And then we've got what we call faulty filters and fruitful filters. Filters are what we got really from the nurture part of us, that first 10, 12 years of upbringing in the home and the school where we were. It taught us all kinds of rules about what is important and what is not important and what we need to do to count for something, to have worth, and a bit more on that later. And then finally, we've got this called pseudo-awareness. We've got this kind of awareness about where we are right now, but it's pseudo because we don't really know what our awareness is. Like right now, if I said to each of you, I want you right now to become aware that you're listening to me. So you're listening to my words, but you're also knowing that you're doing it. So you're working on a parallel track of awareness. Now, with that type of awareness, knowing that you're listening to me, you literally double your conscious energy to be in moments that you're in. Now, that is for the taking for anyone that wants to practice doing it. And I don't think there's anyone here would dispute that the more we know kind of that we're in a particular moment, that we're doing a certain thing, that we're going to be better. Just like the police officer driving our car. But we're in a conversation and, and things are coming off the tracks and maybe someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, Peter, lighten up a bit. This is not going well. Oh, yeah. Now, it's possible for us to have that ability in our brain to pick that up. But likely already most of you have lost that awareness that you're listening to me. See how fleeting it is? But it's only because you haven't learned the skill. So when we call this a pseudo-awareness, we think that we're all fully aware of what's happening right now. If I were to ask you, where are you? Hey, Peter, I'm here. I'm with you. I know what's going on. But behind what's on the surface and what our mind's locked onto in the surface, there is many other things happening in the body and feelings and many other things that are taking place. And it's when we can understand and know in the moment that we are here now, being aware, present, mindful. When we are there, we are much more in command of our environment, much more in command of our relationships and giving and taking and being, the best person we can be in this world. That's what's at stake here. But that is not the way we are programmed. because we're programmed, coming from maybe 1,000,000 years of evolution, to be able to be just in this particular moment here, just, is this dangerous or not? That's all that our ancestors needed and wanted to know. And if that's all we've got. And so naturally, we come up with this primitive predispositions, and the nurture stuff is ours, is, you know, it's there as well. And this here. So this is the human predicament. These primitive predispositions, the chemical factory, the nurturing we got from somebody else, and then this pseudo-awareness, kind of being here but not, you know. Now, why is this such a big deal? Because it's this kind of semi-consciousness, pseudo-consciousness that is keeping us from really being the best person that we can be, because we are not sufficiently awake in the moment to really be contributing and being where we would like to be. So just a bit more on that later, but that's the setup that we have to look at, okay? And the research I'm going to show you is very clear. This is what we're up against. So why do people say and do things and later regret them, or why don't they do things that they wish they had? I'd like you all to do this. This is an important little exercise. Put your finger on your desk or your table, your index finger. I want you to watch it. In the next 5 seconds, I want you to decide to lift that finger off the table and watch it lift. Okay, you should all have done that by now. Okay. Let me tell you what happened in your brain when you did that. We'd had you under functional MRI. This is what we would have seen. We would have seen that 1.4 seconds before that lifted, from the time you said lift to the time it actually did lift, 1.4 seconds, billions of synapses were activated in your brain. Billions. Now, it took 0.4 seconds to get the message from your thinking brain into your motor circuits to make that happen. So that was 0.4. But that 1 second, billions of synapses were running before you actually saw it lift. The next half hour, I'm going to show you what was happening with those billion synapses and what we can do about it. Because those billion synapses all came from the chemical factory and the programming and all that we got. Not the yous, listen to me, okay? So I'm going to show you after break, and I just want to give you a preview that we know where we're going here, okay? I spent my life really in bringing these tools. 4 tools, 4 major tools is all we need. And this is not rocket science. We don't need a master's degree in anything to make this happen. You just follow the rules that I'm giving here, and you're going to start to see that we can do an awful lot about this human predicament. So you're going to hear, as I go through this afternoon, self-understanding. That's the first tool. In the next half hour, we're going to significant. We will double or triple your self-understanding in the next half hour. And anybody that doesn't come up and see me at break, and I'll give you a free book or something. Because you are going to find yourself saying, oh my God, I had no idea. Okay? That's the self-understanding. Once again, I've been saying, it won't work to get out of prison until you know we're in one. This is showing you the prison you're in. It's why we do things that we wish we hadn't, and etc. Then we're going to show you how to self-manage yourself through a lot of the ways that we interact and the likes of that. Then, after break, we're going to show you how to be more self-aware. This idea of a very specific kind of awareness you're going to learn, and then ultimately is the self-expression, the way we want to be. And this is even in difficult chances. In our profession and in our lives, we passionately work to change what we can change to make it right. But the problem with just this PFP version is often the heart closes. In fact, often the motivation we get to try to change things comes from a closed heart. Comes from anger, comes from irritation, comes from resentments. What we want to do, and you're going to see by the end of today how to do this, is passionately work to change, but your heart stays open. We do not have to close the heart in order to get things happening. But typically, the way we are wired with PFP, we are learned to get angry, get resentful, and then we can kick butt or do whatever. I'm going to show you there's a major, major skill set that we can learn quite readily, that we don't have to worry about that, okay? So then, this next piece is pretty scary when you look at it. So I'm just, basically the self-understanding is learning more about this PFP and what we're dealing with, okay? So I ask you this question, and please stick up your hand if you disagree with what I'm going to say. Most people, if they thought about it, would say that being able to think for ourselves, to be able to have command over our thoughts, is one of the most important gifts or qualities that we have. Just being able to think and put two and two together and whatnot. Would you all agree that that's pretty important right up the top? I mean, it goes into helping us have free will and all the things that are important to us to make right decisions. So let me just show you really the predicament. And once again, you don't have to believe any of this. Just tell me if you believe this. The next question I'm going to ask you for this thing, this so important gift of thinking. Can anybody here tell me what your next thought's going to be before you have it? Well, don't answer that question too quickly, because if you do, you're seeing what I'm saying. It means that you're really out of control of your life. If you think that your thinking is really that important, but you don't even know what your next thought's going to be before you have it, that should be scary. If you got that point, does anybody know what the next thought's going to be before they have it? No, you don't. So just coming out of chemical factory, PFP, all you've got going for you is that billion synapses. That's what happens during that before we think of something, and then we come up with it. So the next question, do you have yourself incessant talking all day long, like you can't shut it down? Anyone here not have yad all day long? Like, who's listening, right? You're just yakking, right? 40,000 thoughts a day you have. You're not asking for any of them. It's just yada, right? But fortunately, you can stop them whenever you want, right? Just try now. Like, let's see. I'll give you 15 seconds and just stop thinking, okay? Just want to see what you're doing here. Already you're thinking about not thinking. I know you are. I know you are. Okay, so 3 nasty observations. When we're emotionally hijacked, how long does it take you to realize that you've been emotionally hijacked and to come back on track? Now, some of you might say, oh, Peter, I'm on it. I mean, I'm on it. As soon as I lose my cool, I know I haven't. I'm going to challenge you on that. Look this week or next week and just see how long it takes you. Most of you, it will take hours, sometimes days, and sometimes you may never know, because that's the nature of PFP, this survival reproducing us, right? And finally, maybe the biggest tell of all, I want to see a show of hands on this. If I could take every thought you had yesterday and put it on a really good hard drive with an awesome password, how many of you would give your password to anybody? Show of hands here. No, show of hands. Give me a show of hands. Nada. Why? Because those thoughts are not you. Those thoughts are PFP prison. And those thoughts, sadly, drive a lot of our life that we are not proud of or happy with. Because we're all good, caring people here, we certainly override a lot of the impulses that come our way. But I've just showed you some very important research that shows that your ability to have free will to make important choices is minimal. Because you and I have free will based on being able to have control of our thinking. Now, the good news is, after break, I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this. We significantly can improve our ability to control this thinking that is coming from this chemical factory and all the rest of it, right? I equate it to this. Anybody here seen an old movie called The Truman Show? Jim Carrey? Okay. And how about Matrix? Seen The Matrix? Okay. So there's actually a lot of very serious neuroscientists saying that we could be living in a simulator. Believe it or not. I mean, it sounds far out, right? Now, I don't subscribe to that. I haven't seen enough research that I'm satisfied that, someone's just over there, running the gears. That's what's happened. But I'll tell you this. I 100% believe, and I think in the last half hour I've just showed you, that we, in effect, are in a simulator because we are behaving and feeling and thinking in accordance with the gene pool, the chemical factory, the filters, the way we're nurtured. All of those things have gone into what we are doing today. And if we do not work to, one, understand them, second, self-manage them, become aware of what we're doing, we will go to our grave, not too much more than just the good person who we are, but we want as much as we can for ourselves and other people. So that's why we talk about these parts of our prison, right? Now, I'm just going to start off a bit nerdy, but I'm going to clean my act up in about a minute here. Every one of you right now, at the subconscious level, your brain is activating at like a massive amount of data. But the you who's listening to me, according to MIT and other people as good as they are, very smart folks over there, they will say this, that your brain right now, the you who's listening to me, at best you have operating for yourself is 50 bits of data per second. 50, it's like nothing. It's like a 9-digit phone number. But second by second by second, that's all you've got going for you. As a result, you maybe noticed you've been driving down the same road for, 3 years, and then sometime a building pops up that wasn't there before. You know, where did that come from? Right. Or else you could be thinking of buying a new Toyota or a new that got the 10,000 to put down that stroke on a car, and all of a sudden they're all over the place, and they weren't there before, right? Like, what's that about? That's about something called inattentional blindness. And you really need to know what that is and what to do about it. Because I'm going to start off with some research that actually should be frightening to you, because it shows you how vulnerable we are. But like I said this morning, we don't work to get out of prison until we know we're in one. So the first hour or so, we're going to show you the prison you're in. But the good news is we're going to show you what to do about it. Okay? So just a little definition that I'm going to give you now. This afternoon, when I use the word unconscious, I mean the way you were when you slept last night. Okay? That was kind of when you're in bed. Didn't know what you're doing, couldn't do anything, changed about it. You were just there unconscious. Now, I'm going to use the term semi-conscious. And the semi-conscious, kind of the autopilot us, how typically we drive our car, relate to other people. You know how you put the ignition and you end up in the parking lot? You know, like who drove the car there, right? You were driving, but your mind was someplace else. That's the way we do a lot of our driving in our life, too. And so just to be reminded, when I say that, I mean semi-conscious. Then there's fuller conscious, which we're going to bring you to. By the end of the afternoon, you're going to know well how to become much more fuller consciousness. But this fuller consciousness might start with the comparison of, now how are you driving when there's a police officer behind you? You notice how your game picks up in terms of your consciousness, right? So you got more fuel in the tank of consciousness, you just don't use it nearly enough, right? So then, we also have this knowing that we are there when that police officer is behind us, not just paying more attention to what we're doing, but we know that we're being followed. So those are two very significant skill sets that we're going to show you how to do more of and not to have a police officer behind us, right? So then, we are in effect most often walking or talking in our semi-conscious sleep. So what can we do about it then? This statement, we're born to lose to have the highest quality of life, compassion, action, all that, because we're really designed to survive and reproduce and do the best we can, right? So then, monkey business, these three beings here, okay? We miss buildings, pain, cars, and other truths. We take it in, we hear less of and we remember almost nothing. How many have seen the film called The Monkey Business? Just about a minute and a half clip. Okay, Leah, can we run that? This is worth doing. So once again, it's about a minute or so. I want you to follow the instructions very clearly when this film goes up. It's going to show you at the start what you're asked to do. It'll run for about a minute and a half, and then we'll come back and talk about it on the other side, okay?
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, does that make it even clearer? And we who are looking at certain situations, and when we're asked, saying, yeah, this is what happened. I mean, the idea that we think that what we are seeing in this reality is anywhere near what's happening, I mean, this very moment, is ludicrous. Science is all over this. You just experience this. I could give you a dozen of those, showing that because of that inattentional blindness piece, number one, you only got 50 bits of data processing. That's why you didn't see the gorilla or the curtains changing color. You can't see it all, right? Because 50 bits is just not enough data. And that's like every crowd that you ever work with. So this means a couple of things. It means we got to slow down in thinking that we really are getting everything that we're looking at. And we have to get motivated to want to do better, because we can actually get this 50 bits of data significantly more effective and more accurate. But we have to work at it to get it. And that's what we're going to build into. Once again, this first part, I'm just motivating you to want to come back after break and actually take into account what we're doing here. Because if we don't, you can start seeing this problem. The problem gets worse. Memory is terrible. Memory is like, we'd only not see it all, but our memory is just awful. Here's a task for all of you. See those cards up there. Each one of you, we're going to give you these decks of cards. And your job is to make as much money as you can off these decks of cards. Some pay out high and claw back low, others the opposite. You have to figure out in 5 minutes which deck pays out the most but claws back the least. Do you hear what you're looking at? Okay, so that's the test here. Now, you do this, and if I took all of the results here, this group would average, like every group averages, about 75 draws before you knew that the money is in the blue deck. Okay, so about 75 draws. But when I asked you, when did you have a gut feeling? When did that medial prefrontal cortex intuition start to kick in that you thought maybe it was the blue deck, but you had to get more? Your answers across here would be like 45 draws. But listen to this. Doing this test with scientists, you're hooked up to really good biofeedback meters. Biofeedback meters that, they just tell what the stress response is within your body, right? And here's what the biofeedback meter does. It's behind you, you don't know it's there. When you, after drawing just 10 cards, the next time you go for a red card, the biofeedback meter goes crazy. 10 cards. Your intuitive, somatic intelligence knows so much more than the cognitive brain knows. It's why when we teach mindfulness to support professionals like yourself, moms and dads and adult kids and partners, whatever your role in life is, it's why you can then be significantly more attuned to being more complete, to being more good, because we teach somatic intelligence. We teach you how to read that body signals that are so much earlier than the other parts of the brain. Very, very important part, once again, going into what we're teaching you in the mindfulness, okay? Here's a good one for any wine drinkers. I'm sure we got a few wine drinkers here. Okay, so you're now in an MRI. And we want you to tell us which of these 2 bottles of wine you like the best. So you're in the MRI, you get to sip this. And I say, okay, so here's the $10 bottle of wine. Sip it. Okay. Peter, here's the $90 bottle of wine. Sip that. Now, Peter, which of the 2 wines do you like the best? Well, Peter usually always says a $90 bottle of wine. And that was a whole fix because you really just had 2 $10 bottles of wine. You didn't know I tricked you. So you didn't really get the 90, right? But even that, you thought that the 90 was better because I primed you. 90 is better than 10, right? But here's the significant part of this research. You're in an MRI. And when you sip what you thought was the 90, dopamine centers in the brain get highly activated. It tricks your brain even with that level of what we call diversity, or what we're calling this brain priming. Brain priming is a whole field of science, but brain priming is a big deal. Okay, now, I actually had that done intentionally because I wanted to ask you, how many of you, when that happened, for a second or two, you had a little bit of a jolt? Most people had a jolt? Yeah. You do what I'm going to teach you after break. Thanks for doing that, by the way, because I wanted to teach this. You do this after break, your startle response will come down to next to nothing. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It'll take you about 300 hours, the research says. But the next time that happens, after you've done your 300 hours, that will not move your somatic system one scintilla. And it's that little break that you got there. Your brain's quickly organized it. Oh, it's just kind of the table. But it's this that gets people into doing less than optimal things, saying less than optimal things and doing less than optimal things. And you're going to learn how to catch that trigger before it actually happens. Yeah, thanks for doing that. That was great, guys. Okay, so in pairs, decide who's going to be 1 and who's going to be 2. Just in pairs, just decide 1 or 2, okay? Got it? Okay. Okay, so now, everybody close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. All eyes closed. No cheating. Just the ones. Everybody's got your eyes closed. Just the ones. Open your eyes and see what's on the screen. Okay, ones, close your eyes. 2s, open your eyes. See what's on the screen. 2s, close your eyes. Now tell each other what you see on the screen. There seems to be some disagreement. I don't know why that would be, okay? I'll tell you why it is, because number 2s, I primed you with that. And number 1s, I primed you with that. So I kind of cheated a bit, right? But we are getting primed every day of our life. Every TV show you watch, every whatever, you're getting primed without even knowing it. If you found yourself saying, looking for the 30th time that same commercial, I don't know why they run that commercial. I've seen it a dozen times. Why the hell are they? They don't want you to understand what they're saying in the commercial. They're priming your brain to be directed to choose that product just from a brain, not from a cognitive point of view, but just from a brain priming point of view. And by the way, don't worry about it. Some of you will never see the other. Believe that, there's about 10-20% of you will not see that. If you're primed with the bunny, you won't see the duck and vice versa. But so don't go crazy with it. Just it's a part of the prison we're in, okay? This may be one of the scariest of all the research when it comes to looking at our brain functioning in this chemical factory. You're in an MRI again, and a hand comes up on the screen in the MRI, and there's part of the hand, a Q-tip touches it, and your brain really doesn't change much at all. But then a hand comes in, and a hypodermic needle is rammed in that fleshy part between the index finger and the thumb. And you have an automatic empathic response just from what you're seeing, provided and only provided that you relate to that hand as your hand. Your prefrontal cortex does not give near the empathic response, if you do not relate to that hand, is your hand. If it's a different color, it's a different. I'll show you one of the experiments they have with it. They looked at 4 or 5 different religions, and this has got nothing to do with religion, but they just happen to use this. So Scientologist, atheist, Buddhist, Christian, Jew, whatever. And when the atheist is in the scanner, and the atheist, just one's word on that hand, and the atheist hand gets that hypodermic needle, that brain fires into maximum empathy. But if a Buddhist or Christian hand went in there, the atheist doesn't fire the same way. And it's the same with Christians, the same with Buddhists, same with whatever. Our brain has got a naturally tuned into, it kind of goes back, they figure, to herd mentality, the tribe. Different is dangerous in the old days. And when it's similar, we have an empathic response, just like you wouldn't push the person off the tower, right? Because that's us, that's us. So much of who we are go back many thousands of years. And so just understanding, once again, the predicament that we're in, we can work to get out of it. Now, at this time in my talks, I like to just bring this really to a central question. And it goes like this. Given what I've just showed you about how out of control we are with thinking, with priming, with all these things, given all of that, is there anyone here who can logically say that we have happening in our world good guys and bad guys? What we have is people who have got a bad gene pool, a bad chemical factory, maybe a bad parenting or parts of it, and then that pseudo-awareness being really unaware. That's what we have. And a major part of our growing in maturity, being able to be the best we can be, is when we get that, when we start to really say, oh my gosh, how could any logical person, knowing what, people who are misbehaving, doing all kinds of things, knowing where they've come from. We do our work. Our heart of compassion will stay totally open with these people, even while we take care of business. We take care of business, we passionately work to change what can and should be changed, but the heart stays open. This is what we're talking about here. And today you've got a cognitive sense of it here before break, saying to yourself, yeah, this doesn't make sense. I mean, if this research is right, that person that's doing that stuff is really, in this matrix simulator or whatever, because they didn't ask to have that gene pool. They didn't ask to have that nurtured. They didn't have to ask any of that pseudo-awareness. They're stuck with it. And so our job is absolutely to really make sure that people do not harm other people and all the rest of it. But we keep the heart open. And you know what that does? That keeps the upper brain online. Because when we close our heart, we get angry, we get resentful. I'm going to talk to you about this in a second. When we get that upper brain goes offline. Cortisol fills the system. And you're not doing the best by anybody when you don't have that upper brain online. And it'll only be being able to keep your center, your actual awareness, that's going to help you to do that, right? This is really interesting. So you're right now 1 year of age, and you're on your mother or dad's lap, okay? And you're watching a puppet show of teddy bears and a duck. On the stage is a duck in a box with a lid on it. Once again, this has been done with thousands and thousands of people. So the duck is up there and it tries to get this lid up, and it gets about halfway up. And it struggles. And the little bear in a blue vest comes on and helps the duck get the lid all the way up. They put it down together and they actually have a little hug. I mean, I've watched this video happen. They have a little hug, and the bear in the blue vest goes off stage. Act 2, you're still watching this, you're 1 year of age. Duck tries to get it up, it's halfway there, struggles, and a little bear in a red vest comes on, slams it shut. Duck tries to get up again, red bear slams it shut. So, Act 2's over, the play's over. The puppeteer comes out to you with these 2 bears and puts them right where you can touch them and play with them. And I don't know if there's any surprise to you, but like 90% of us go for the blue bear, the good guy. So the scientists would say, so we're born to be good, we relate to goodness. Because at 1 year of age, you could not have been taught that, right? But here's what I take from the science. I take it a next step further. At 1 year of age, we're already sorting out good guys from bad guys. 1 year of age, sorting out good guys from bad guys. That's what we're up against, right? And that's what we have to grow beyond, and we can grow beyond that, okay? So just to show that I'm not alone in this, there's a few fellow explorers, I call them. And each of us, there's another whom we do not know, Carl Jung says. Pink Floyd, any Pink Floyd fans here? Is not old enough? Too young, too old, too young? There's someone in my head, and it's not me. It was a great album. Number 3. Just listen to this. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. And this one, you got to read this one real slow. How can I know what I think until I hear what I say? Hear that? That just don't know really what I think because we know the next thought's going to be before it happens, right? So, a little bit on some self-management tools. Just give you 3 or 4 of these, okay? So the second tool that we talk about is this self-management. Now, this mask, I got this when when I was setting up human health services in Mexico, like deep in the heart of Mexico, way out in the boonies anyway. I went to this village and I found this artisan that had done this mask. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, where did they get this insight? Because this mask just says so much, right? Which I'll explain in a second. But anyway, I said, so what is it? This person in broken English actually explained to me what I had been learning through my work in developing my introspection and into myself. So it goes like this, and I've talked about it a bit. This left side of the open side of the mask, which is this primitive predispositions we've been talking about, and our inherited nature chemical factory that needs, self-management to skillfully manage, the skill sets we've been talking about. So that's the outer side of all of us, right? But as I've been explaining to you, there's also an inner side, this nurtured self, this childhood nurture program, faulty filters. I call this the pipelines that carry the chemicals that need self-understanding for us to know why we do what we do and to make positive changes, that emotional self-regulation stuff. And then that deep us, which we're going to get into after break, that looks at our mindless semi-consciousness that needs self-awareness to actually be present and conscious, to turn off malfunctioning chemical factory pipeline valves and turn on conscious connecting switches to experience authentic happiness beyond doing, getting, having, bigger, better, more, and to want to make the world a better place. So that's just a neat piece of art that I got with that. By the way, one of my most meaningful, I think is a word, was on that trip. We were just out in the middle of nowhere. We come around a corner in the Jeep, and I'm with a person who speaks Spanish and whatnot. She was taking me around the country to set up these social and health care agencies. Come around the corner, and these 4 16, 17-year-old kids with AK-47 stopped us, pointed the gun at us, and came right down my window, guns pointed, get out, get out, get out. So she says, do not leave the Jeep. Whatever you do, stay there. They're going to throw drugs in here, we're going to have trouble. Now, this is just 1 or 2% of people. Every country's got their difficult folks that are still struggling with life, so I'm not being pejorative here. But I do want to say to you that I was able to, in that moment, even with an AK-47 looking at me, I was able to stay pretty calm. And it's a relative term, but you're going to find as you go through life, there's many moments when you wish you were a bit calmer, and then we're going to teach you how to do that, okay? So this one here, kindness matters. It's just, what else can we say? I should leave that up for half an hour. It's just so important, right? So we first managed to apply the following growth and development principles. We cultivate an attitude of indebtedness and being grateful. Like, if we get up out of bed in the morning and before we brush our teeth, we haven't been grateful, we've missed a really important part of the day. We really want to be able to bring that to where it needs to be, right? We ask ourselves, what am I missing in this moment? I just shared with you that, that we miss so much. Watch the Monkey Business Agreement. Find yourself, anytime you're in any type of a conversation with anyone, and there's a difference of opinion, you find yourself catching yourself in the moment, calming yourself, and clarifying what's going on by you saying to yourself, I wonder what I'm missing. I wonder what I'm missing. That is the question we should be asking ourselves in every conversation we have when we have a difference of opinion, and even when we don't have it. We know that we're likely at best seeing, a third of what's going on at any time. Ask yourself the question when you're listening to someone complaining or you're reading an incident report. Always follow up. What could have been missed, right? What could have been missed? And then this is really important. I used to do a lot of executive coaching, Fortune 500 companies and whatnot. And so I get an executive and I get working with them, and I say to them, so tell me what you've been doing for your personal growth and development. And they say, well, I took a course on anger management and problem solving and executive planning. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I don't see you on your list here. What do you mean? I don't see you. What are you doing intrapersonally to grow yourself to be a better person? All that stuff is important. But unless we grow us, this self that we've been talking about here, we're not going to reach near our fullest potential, and definitely not have this open heart that we're talking about for other people, right? So we grow ourselves. Always start with your deeper work on you, this person who we are and who can we grow to be. Some things in life are just not fair. I mean, you've seen that. I mean, the number of people that are holding on to stuff that happened last year and still close down on it. Get off it. Sometimes when the horse is dead, you get off, right? Success leaves clues. Connect with happy people who seem to really have a manifestation of good practices in terms of their living, what they're reading, what they're spending on their selves in terms of their own disciplines. Just buy lunch for these people once a month. And don't worry if they don't invite you for lunch, and don't worry if they never pay. I mean, if you can hang out with really successfully evolved people, I mean in terms of what we're talking about, the values and all of that, you want to spend time with these people for sure. Life's a matter of odds, and we say, let's plant many crops. I learned this from one of my teachers. I was back in my late 20s. This is about following the laws of sowing and reaping. Okay, you know that from old terms. First one, if you don't prepare the land and plant crops, then weeds are going to grow on your land. Number one, right? I mean, this is all metaphoric, of course, for what we're talking about here. But number one, if you don't do any planting at all, count on weeds to fill your garden. Number two, we reap much more than we sow. We sow like even a cup of corn, we get like a bushel of food, right? We sow a cup of weeds, we get a bushel of weeds. So really watch what we're sowing, right? We plant different crops to provide balanced nutrition and protection, nurture all meaningful relationships. So it's not just one, zeroing in on one. We want to make sure that we have a broad sense of relationships and nurture as many as we can, and even nurture the ones that seem to be a bit bristly. You never know when people are ready to really grow, right? And then finally, number four, honor the seasons. In the spring, take advantage of the spring for planting. Learn these four tools we're talking about would be one we look at. Number two, summer. Protect your crops all summer because all good will be attacked. Count on it. That's just the nature of the planet. And attack doesn't always come from outside. It comes from, I'm going to sleep in an extra hour this morning and not do the work of, of exercising and reading inspirational whatever. That's being attacked by weeds in your garden, okay? So you continue with your best daily practices. Then in the fall, we reap without complaint or apology. We celebrate our successes, but make your failures painful. Make your failures painful. I mean, this philosophy that's going around, you've just been to an altercation with someone, you've had an argument, you've done whatever, and your friend or someone says, don't worry about it. That's their stuff. I mean, you're cool, man. You don't even worry about it. Don't even think about it. No. Every time we're in any situation where there's a difference of opinion, there's been some type of a disconnect, always ask yourself, what did I miss there? And what part of that was mine? That's how we make sure that we learn for the next thing. And we may be clean. We may have been everything we could do. But always ask the question, what happened there, okay? And finally, in the winter, learn how to handle our winters because negative is normal. Life is not fair. We don't have to like it. We just have to work through it. Sometimes we do it all right and the crop still fails. You do everything you need to do, but sometimes the crop fails. That's the nature we're talking about. When we do this work, though, completely, these 4 tools and whatnot, we will have much better odds at growing to our fullest mind, body, and spiritual potential and passion to help other people have the same, right? And if we don't sow, we will never reap. We must invest time and effort and take some justified risks to grow beyond the chemical factory, us. Next, laws of sowing and reaping. You're going to get all these in the handout. I'm just going to pick on a couple one here. Life requires resolve. I stay motivated and I really stay committed to my tasks. Life requires do. Intentions without actions breeds delusions. Life demands I am. We just have to do things to get going, right? And intentions. Intentions, wow. What can I say about intentions? Like, intentions are one of the most powerful and positive things that you'll ever do. If I had to, like everything I said today, everything I'm going to say after break, if I had to say, here's one that you don't want to mess with, is having intentions. So I'm now about, 38, maybe 40-ish. And I've got this great coach, his name's Carl. And he comes to me and he says, Peter, he said, you've been doing well, but you could do a lot better if you just got serious about making intentions, which you talked to me about several times. I said, yeah, Carl, it's good. And if you think I need more, send me something to read. He said, no. He said, you need to do some things to prove to yourself how powerful intentions are. So I said, okay. So he said, I want you to do a fire walk. Now, has anyone here even heard of a fire walk? Okay, a couple of you have. Okay. So they're likely not even allowed anymore because they're kind of right out there, okay? But basically, you walk on red hot coals, you practice your intentions, and then for about 35 feet, about that room, you walk on these red hot coals. Now, science has proven beyond any doubt, no doubt, science has proven that anyone can do this without getting burned. Anyone can do it. So we did this. Now, just 25 of us did it. 5 or 6 people got seriously burned and went to the hospital. But the rest of us, we had like a minor sunburn on the bottom of our feet because we could just hold that belief, that intention. And I just can't tell you how important it is that you learn to have strong intentions. When you bring intention to your relationships, adult, kid, partner, whoever, that starts to make a difference. And do not underestimate the power of the mind and attention. And you can read so much more about it, but just to kind of bring that to you, okay? Yeah, when people are difficult. Joanne and I, through our books, we've written 2 books now. Our second book's just coming out. It's called Stealing Happiness from Life, The Ultimate Inside Job. Not a great title? So we got lots of poetry in our books because we like to teach with poetry. So when people are difficult, people, in their presence a chore, with catch and calm, their pain you'll feel when you question more. What sad life could that child have had to have so tightly closed their heart's door? I'm going to take you now into really understanding one of our most powerful emotions that's taking us so far off the rails. And it's difficulty with our resiliencies, and it just undermines any resiliency you've got, and it's resentment, it's anger, it's pushed back on. The first point on understanding what anger is about is that it is about less than feeling optimal. It is insecurity. Now, this is the way the brain works. Just listen to what I'm going to say here. Our brain, we established, has got 50 bits of data per second. When we have feelings of insecurity, not enoughness, embarrassment, guilt, grief, anxiousness, all of those really, really tough emotions, painful, the brain has learned if it can get angry, then it crowds all of that experience off awareness. because the brain can only handle 50 bits of data. So if you stay angry at something or someone for long periods of time, you don't have to deal with these more painful emotions. Now, this is a very, very important point that I've given to you here, okay? Now, you may say, well, Peter, I don't intend you to. No, you don't intend to do that at all. It's happening as a part of our survival. Just like if you have a back injury. You have a back injury and the pain is like at a 7. They work on it, pain comes down to 4. They didn't touch the epicenter, likely. They touched the traumatized sympathetic muscles around it automatically, because those muscles are saying, hey, protect me from doing any more injury. So they stop you from doing what you're doing. So what's happened with the emotional side of who we are is that the brain just automatically sets up a defense mechanism for these more painful emotions. This is for the average person that does not choose to grow in what we're talking about. We go to our grave finding that irritations, resentments, angers, call them whatever you want, you'll often find. Now, sometimes anger is just a reaction to man's inhumanity to man. I mean, that's a given. But the vast majority of anger and resentments that people have are with this purpose. They don't even know what's happening. They just find themselves, and people can go for months and months angry at certain things. And I say to these people when I'm coaching them, hey, if you weren't feeling all that anger right now, what would you be feeling? And it takes about 15 minutes and they start talking about the loss and the grieving and the not enoughness and the feelings of insecurity. That's what's behind a lot of our resentments and a lot of our grievances, and we don't even know it. So just start thinking about that as you go through it. And when you see people who are angry, you see people who are just ready, a pain in the butt and all that, maybe ask yourself, what might be behind that anger? What might be they feeling discouraged about right now or insecure or whatever? Because insecurity, as the graphic shows you, insecurity's got 2 steps. I got this from my prof in grad school. Insecurity will show itself either as withdrawn, inferior, and all that, but it also shows them bombastic out there. When you see somebody who's out there taken advantage of and all of that, you ask yourself, I wonder what they're so insecure about, because insecurity is like a teeter-totter on one end than the other, right? So then, let's talk about anger. Here's the anger continuum that we would, put out there. Always on my mind, always on my mind. Into my room it creeps without making a sound. Bodies and minds become as one. Our union knows no bound. So seductive in its ways, it plays the game unfair, putting words upon my lips, and I don't know to care. So much destruction at its feet, so many souls it kills. Weaponized words its stock and trade, keeping me from still. Chemicals ensure that it survives, is what gives it this power. Merciless demands it makes of me, keeps me prisoner every hour. Its pleasure and power are the prison where suffering is created. Its plans and schemes for all times thrives when awareness sedated. Oh, the price I do pay, since my freedom it has bought, when unaware, forced to bow to them, each mindless, angry thought. So steps to prevent anger, to catch yourself starting to become angry, You're going to notice after break, when we teach you how to manage all this lot, we're going to teach you these steps. So catch yourself in the moment, then calm yourself. Now the third C, to clarify the needs of this moment. And now and only now can we consciously connect. Beyond ego, beyond chemical factory, we can consciously connect when we're doing this. And now we can offer competent, compassionate care, right? So with mindfulness, restructuring beliefs, the heart transplant, when we ask who there is to blame here, remember I shared with you before who's really to blame there, our anger starts to soften. Then with mindfulness, keeps this upper brain online to solve the problems, and we don't have to feel kind to authentically be it. This is a very important statement I've made at the back. You're going to see that we can actually teach compassion. We can actually teach kindness. And some of what we're going to show you after break is how that happens. Stanford University have come up with an incredible process for this, researched it really well. So we're going to show you after break that feelings are just a part of our sensory system. Thoughts and feelings are no more than a part of our sensory system like smell, touch, and taste. You're going to see that. You're actually going to experience that after break. When you start seeing your feelings and thoughts as just like smell, touch, and taste, they stop driving you the way they are now. They stop being so heavy. And it just takes catching ourselves, calming, and clarifying to really activate that. So the very, very good news then, the power and influence of negative PFP that we've been talking about can be significantly reduced as a result of becoming more mindful or conscious. Mindfulness actually rewires the brain. It literally rewires the drive modes, like the medial frontal cortex, and it gives us 5 ways to really be emotionally self-regulated and to enhance our capacity, to make better choices, which is what we want to do. As we said before, the chemical factory is not really designed that way. So, BFit mindfulness, what is it and what to do about it? I'd like everyone to pick up your pen, if you would, and write your signature. Just any place you want, just pick it up and write it, okay? Okay, and write it again for me, only this time with your non-dominant hand. Okay, and one more time, this time with your non-dominant, but I want you saying to yourself, I am aware that I'm writing with my non-dominant hand. Just, I'm aware that I'm writing with my non-dominant hand as you write. Okay, just do that one. Okay, so I've had you do that. Just it helps me give a little bit of definition to what mindfulness is. The way you first wrote your signature was pretty much a mindless moment. You have a file in your head and it just played. You weren't aware you were doing it. That's the way it is. And that's the way the brain has been wired. When we can get something down, do it often enough, it just gets done. And we don't think it through. We're not aware of it happening or anything like that. And of course, you broaden that to understand our whole human predicament. This is what's happening because the brain has been trained. Make a file on the important things, then stick with them. Miss the gorilla, whatever it takes, right? The first way that you wrote your things with that non-dominant, you actually experienced a mindful moment. 1/3 of mindfulness, it's only 3 little legs on the stool. One is knowing what you're doing when you're doing it. And for this brain, when we do something new, we're forced to pay attention, right? See the difference in that? Now, what we're going to teach you is how to have that same capacity for knowing what you're doing, even though you've done it 100 times. So we have to just make this switch. Even though, we've done it many times, we can still be aware of what we are doing, number one. Number two, the way you wrote it, when I asked you to write it, but with your non-dominant, and say, I'm aware that I'm writing it, that brought you to the second part of this mindfulness that we're going to teach, which is knowing that you're doing something. So first one, knowing what I'm doing, and the second, that I'm doing it. We're going to take you all through this when we do our exercise, okay? And so that's the first couple of parts of mindfulness, which takes care of what you're doing and that you're doing it. Now, this next part, we're going to teach you, this third piece is going to teach you to, in the moment that you're experiencing something, you're going to learn to know what the body is doing, that's somatic intelligence we talked about, what your thoughts are doing, and what your feelings are doing. And you will literally, through this little exercise we're going to do, you will experience what you're looking at here, which you can maybe see the difference between this and that chemical factor that we've been talking about, those primitive predispositions, and looking at the nurture that we've got, and even that, that form of primitive predispositions, and all of the unconscious, semi-conscious stuff that we're really saddled with. So just quickly on this, and then we're going to do a little exercise. I put a microscope here because what we're going to do is like there's no trance state, there's no hypnotized. I say to people, you're hypnotized now, I'm trying to get you unhypnotized, is what we're going to do. So I put the microscope up there because you're going to see things, and just in this little 10, 12-minute exercise, that you maybe hadn't realized about yourself before. And I put the microscope up saying like 200 odd years ago when Galileo and the group, discovered that we were not an Earth-centered universe after all, or when we got the microscope, we realized that there were critters on that finger if it got cut, and if we didn't take care of it, we could lose that finger to these critters. Well, the critters were always there, just that with the microscope, we developed germ cell theory a couple of years ago, and now we know how to take care of that situation. But the germs, critters were always there. You're going to experience this BFIT mindfulness, and I'm giving you this because I'm opening you to being in a state where you're going to see the possibility of more of who you are and more of your potential to be who you are and who you want to be. Okay, so that's the basics of what we're going to be looking at. Little instruction, not that much. I'm going to ask you to sit just in your chair, but bring your posture kind of straight as you can. So, and keep it off the back of the chair. So just so it's feet flat on the floor. It's just easier for the body mind to sort out what's happening in this process when we just have a good posture, okay? The next is that there's three kind of menaces, if you will, to good mindfulness practice. I call them dozing, frozen, and posing. I didn't get those words from Harvard. They're my personal words, okay? So dozing means we're going to work with you now, and we're going to bring you to a state where, you're at beta now. We're going to bring you into kind of a theta range, which is about 10 points less than that beta. And that's very powerful state for the brain to work in. It can discover a lot of things. And so, but just pay attention to what I'm saying to you and don't slip down into being almost asleep. That's the dozing. If dozing was mindfulness and consciousness, we would have a benevolent planet because we all sleep, right? But sleeping is not it. Relaxing isn't it. Your mind will be more alert during this exercise than any other time in the day. So it's not about resting or whatnot. I've trained about 15,000 people in this in Australia and Mexico, US and Canada. And I have a lot of students who come to me and they've been doing this for 12, 15 years. And they said, I thought I was just supposed to get relaxed and chill. Get rid of those thoughts. We're not going to try to get rid of thoughts. We're not going to try to make any thoughts happen. We're just going to be with what is. And I'll give you really close guidance on this, okay? Frozen is being frozen in thought, which is we often are at the file, and I'm going to guide you close enough that that won't happen, okay? And then posing is just kind of going through it. It's late in the day. You've been incredibly great to be working with today. I know that your energies must be low, so I'm saying to you, dig as deep as you can to make this happen. It could really enhance a lot of who you want to be and who you are. So with that then, I invite you to close your eyes, and eventually you'll do this wide open teaching like I'm doing now, but just close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, the first thing I ask you to say to yourself is, I'm aware that I'm here now. Just renewing that here now awareness. And then as we do, just to focus the body, brain, move your awareness to your breathing and put your awareness on your belly. As you breathe in, you're going to notice the sensation of the belly rising, and you breathe out, it's going to fall. Just do that for a couple of breath cycles. Ideally, we're breathing around 3 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale, but 2 or 4 is fine. Try to just, though, breathe more, even twice as much on the exhale as the inhale. I'll tell you why later. Okay, that's good. Now bring your awareness to your chest and do the same. Once again, you're not visualizing this, you're actually experiencing the body's sensations. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly release. Just breathe in, breathe out, and then slowly rele And then bring your awareness to your nostrils. And here you're going to label or say to yourself, in and out. Pay as close attention as you can. You may notice one nostril more predominant than the other. Just being aware of what is. Now, as I give you this instruction, if you have thoughts, which everyone will, for now, I'd like you to just gently but firmly stay with my focus and just leave the thoughts in the background as best you can, for now. Now bring your awareness to your left arm and your left shoulder, and on your next inhalation, I'd like you to tighten that to the count of 3 or 2, and then release it slowly to the count of 4 or 6. You're mainly interested in the body sensations here. Now go to your right leg and do the same. Tighten for 2 or 3. Experience the tightening and then slowly release. Experience the release. We're just sensitizing you now to some of the somatic intelligence. Then move over to your left leg and do the same. And then back to your right arm, right shoulder. Do the same. And then bring your awareness to your face. Just start at the forehead and just slowly make your way down each breath cycle, moving to a new location. The forehead, the eyes, nose, mouth, jaw. Just being intentionally relieving any unnecessary muscle tightness there. And then bring your awareness to your throat. This is often the first manifestation of grief or sadness. Starts to show here. Then bring your awareness to your chest again. Often this is a place where anger first manifests, resentments. And then back to the belly. Anxieties, fears often first manifest here before they take over the body. So this is just a little sensitizing you to the body that is responsible for so much of who we are, what we think and feel. Now I'd like you to leave the body awareness in the background, and I'd like you to do with the thinking mind what you just did with the body. So you're going to use the same witness, the same observer, and I'm going to show you some parts of the thinking process for you to observe. So you're going to notice that one of the ways that you think is in words, sentences, monologue. Right now, say some words to yourself, just whatever. Be aware that you're doing it. Now, when that happens spontaneously, we call that talk thinking. Some of you will think more in pictures or mind movies. Right now, intentionally bring in, say, a sunset. Now, whatever representation came to you with that, when that happens spontaneously, we call that an image thought. So we're going to start you off then just looking at whatever arises. Right now, the content is irrelevant. We just want you to look at the form or the way thoughts arise out of that subconscious. So just sit back now, something like how a cat might look at a mouse hole waiting to see what comes up. You're not going to try to make anything come up. You're not going to try to make anything happen or shut anything down. You're just going to be the observer, whatever wants to come up. And as talk comes up, just say talk. And just let it do what it wants to do, but don't get pulled into the content. You're just looking at form. Image comes up, just do that. And we're going to do that for a minute or two. Just start that now. Label something at least every breath cycle. Now, if you get pulled into the content, you know what to do. Just gently but firmly come back to being the observer of the form. Just a little while longer, renew your resolve to just be the observer of that form, whatever arises, image or talk. Now I'd like you to add just 2 more points of information. Some of you will already have noticed that there's times when there doesn't seem to be anything happening. They're just like flatline. When that happens, we just label that none, as in nothing's happening. And for everything else, in terms of this thinking process, when it's not none, but it's not a clear image or talk, all that other stuff, we just label that some, as in something's happening. So now you have 4 balls in the air, so to speak. Image, talk, some or none. Just do that for a minute as well. Once again, just all looking at the form of the way. If you get pulled into the content, you know what to do. Just come back to looking at just the form. Okay, that's good. Now, leave that in the background and just focus on feel. Now, some of you will have feelings that are neutral. Some will be maybe impatient, frustrated. Some will have a relative calm. There's no preference here. Just notice what you're feeling and see if there's any body sensation that may tie into that. May not today, but eventually you'll notice there's always a body sensation attached to feel. But just explore feel for 30 seconds. Okay, that's good. So that completes this session of Be Fit Mindfulness, B for body, feel, F. Before you open your eyes and come back to the group, I would like you to just state some statement of gratitude for yourself. I say something like, I'm so deeply grateful for being gifted this one more day. And then intentions. I intend to be the absolute best today that I can be. And then finally, an intention for others. I intend for everyone I meet today, help them be their best. Just something like that as a way to close off the process. And then just open your eyes and let's just talk a bit about what happened there. So, in terms of that process, how many of you would say that you thought more in talk or words? Put up your hand. Talk, mostly. And how about image? More image? Okay, good. How about both? Any people have both? Okay, that's great. So, most of you have put up your hand for one of those ways of thinking, right? So, the significance of that is this, and I don't think this is a stretch, and please challenge me if you think it is, but because you could tell me how you were thinking, that means that you activated a part of you that is not your thoughts. Like you, a part of you actually saw your thoughts arise and pass away, arise and pass away. Maybe up until now in your whole life, you have never known that you could be separate from your thoughts. See, if we don't know we're having a thought, it has us. It's all that chemical factor and everything else we're talking about. That's the way we go through life. But when you can activate, grow, and develop a part of you that can watch a thought arise and pass away, that proves to you that that thought is not you. That thought is just a part of your sensory system. It is a tool and a valuable tool. And so long as you can remain conscious of those thoughts, they do not own you. They do not drive you the way the chemical factory has decided that they should. So that's the first takeaway from what you've just done. And most of you will think about that, but most say, well, I have to admit, I did see thoughts arise and pass away. So that's the first insight, what we're looking at. And next, how many of you noticed that it just, as soon as you watch it, it just kind of broke up, like it didn't stay very long? Like I'll tell you right now, I know for each of you that your talk thoughts last about 2 seconds and your image maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Now they were likely right now replaced by others, but you literally watch the thought arise and pass away, arise and pass away. And you do this work more, and you're going to start to have more space between those thoughts. And that space between those thoughts, I think, is where a lot of our care, compassion comes from, when we're not driven by this surviving, reproducing mind of ours. Those spaces are very, very special spaces, okay? So that's the next piece that we're looking at. Now, how many of you would say you had a little calm, maybe just a relative calm compared to when you came in here? Not, give me a show of hands. It's not be full calm, but you sense it a little bit different. So that's really significant, because this is what you did. You activated your parasympathetic nervous system. Just listen to this. In a little 10-minute exercise, you activated that calming system, that system that's tied to the medial prefrontal cortex that we talked about. When you were calm there, you actually grew neuron cells. This is Dr. Richard Davis from the University of Wisconsin, tested this particular mindfulness, and that's what we show. So you didn't just, in 10 minutes, you activated that system that is so rich and so complete. You put that into your life front and center. So can you imagine you're going into a meeting with, a child or a parent or someone you're supporting and whatnot? Can you imagine having the capacity to just take 5 or 10 minutes, do that form of practice, and then just be in that state when you're in that situation and hear this and hear it well? You do this enough. In fact, the research says this. You do this practice for 25 hours, a total of 25 hours. It's like, 15 minutes a day for like 6 months. It's like nothing, right? You do that for a total of 25 hours, and this is what Dr. Davison's research shows, that when you pass that 25-hour mark, it's incremental, but you will have a part of your parasympathetic system turned on all day long, even in crisis. Now, not fully turned on, but the more of this you do, the more it's going to be even deeper turned on. But Davidson proved that the brain shows itself through this imaging, that when you go to this level, just 25 hours, you start to grow that capacity. And now you continue to do it 50, 100, 200 hours, and you start to now not be driven by that chemical factory of predispositions and nurtured and all of that, that pseudo awareness that we had. This is real awareness. This is bringing yourself completely to this moment. And that brings you to then a whole other potential to live. And this, I'm an old guy, as you can see. I have looked around the world for like 50 years at any way that I could make my life better and other people's life better. And this is a fundamental tool. Without this tool, we just will not be able to get where we want to get through this process, okay? So I just leave that with you in terms of that process. If you go on to my website, you've got it when we handed it out there. There's practice sessions. My Spotify link, you can link up through that website as well. Spotify, I've got 25, 27 different riffs and talks and guided practice sessions that you could explore further, okay? And so if you have any questions or whatever, write me. We now are connected. I answer all those emails, and I'll do whatever I can to get you connected, okay? So just to finish off a little bit of our PowerPoint here. Here's like 5 ways as to how we can accomplish radical change to nature, nurture, and this nasty prison we're in. BFIT Mindfulness has been specifically designed to interrupt this authoritarian regime's power, right? So first, it's a reminder that we're in prison. You do that exercise, you're going to see the mind wanting to do all its riffs and all that, and you're going to see, I don't have to be driven by those. I can develop a part of me that watches them come and go, but they are not me, right? So then, that's the first piece, just a reminder of this prison we're in. Next, you can have awareness right now of more optimal responses. Remember, I shared with you this morning how we're somewhat, driven, if you will, by this PFP. We don't know where our next thought's going to be. We can't shut them down. We're horrified if someone found out our thoughts. All of that stuff, this is how to neutralize that issue of being driven by nature's way of getting us surviving and reproducing. With this, you actually learn how to, and the more you do this, you start to, right in the moment, doing this. So what happens then? We catch ourselves in the moment, and this starts to become just a basic tenet of how we live. We're always catching ourselves in the moment. We're not semi-conscious, or pseudo-conscious, we're now more fully conscious. Become aware right now that you're listening to me. You will start to have that happening many times an hour, right? So we catch yourself, and now any calming that we need to do, just the catching brings calming. But now we look at clarifying and what's going on here, what do I need to do, etc. And then from there we consciously connect with folks, right? So this is the paradigm that we look at, this catch, calm, clarify, and consciously connect. And we get it through the practice that we've just done. I'll just give you just a shorthand version of this, but about a couple of years ago, my wife and I were coming back from attending to my mom and dad's grave, actually, on a Sunday morning. It was raining, and we came around a corner, and there had been a terrible truck accident, like a really terrible truck accident. And we were like there within the first minute or two. There were 2 people kind of directing traffic. One woman was on her cell phone. So we stopped, and Joanne went to see what they were doing, and I looked over at the vehicle, and it was smoking. But I thought, well, I could just run over there, and if there's a driver still alive, I could drag him out of it, and it'd be worth the effort. So I did that, and I went over, and this man Ben was trapped, just right in the roof, and the whole Jeep had just collapsed. So I ended up then just sitting and talking to him, and and held his hand and just comforted him, and finally heard the sirens and the police and the jaws of life and all the rest of it came into it, the police. And I just stayed with him and just talked to him and told him that that he was going to be okay. I actually got him doing a little bit of this mindful breathing and whatnot. Sadly, in about an hour and a half, even after they tried to get his wreck off his mangled body, it just wasn't to be, and he died. I kind of cried like I've known him all my life. It was just, we're just two strangers meeting on the side of the road, but it was very, very intense. And so I went over and washed the blood off my hands and the puddle of rain and whatnot. A police officer came up and said, thanks a lot, that was great work. And I didn't really say anything because I didn't feel like talking. He had his book out, but he knew what was happening. He put it away and came to see me the next day and whatnot. Now, if you'd been looking at that situation, you would have described that exactly as I described it. As close as I can remember it, that's what happened. But that was a very, very incomplete description of really what was happening. Because when I pulled up to that situation, looked over and saw this truck that was literally still smoking, I caught myself having two distinct thoughts. One was, I got to stop and help. The other was, I don't know if I want to get involved in this. I mean, police will be coming, firefighters, and I can't do much anyway. So I really thought, because I got grandkids and great sons and daughters. I mean, I got life to live. But anyway, I made a conscious choice, and I did it. Now, I don't know if you've ever been involved in one of these, but when you're running, it's just like slow motion. Like, it took me an hour to get there. That's what it seemed like. But I was just fully conscious of what I was doing. Went over, went to take his hand, and more resistance. Just like I had resistance coming to him, more resistance. The kid could have AIDS, like 1,000,000 to 1 chance. And so I really made an informed choice, and I took his hand. And then I just talked him through a lot of what we talked today, just in terms of this mindful breathing and the likes of that. And we did our best with it, and he died. And then when the police officer came up, said, thanks, that was good work, I had another feeling of shame, because a good part of me didn't want to be there. And I was feeling like a phony. So I caught myself with that. I calmed myself with that. I then clarified that. And this is the way it goes in real life. You find yourself being able to be so much more fully in these moments, but you're not working from this pseudo-awareness. You really are there experiencing this catch, calm, clarify, and consciously connect. And this is where the source of our ability to bring ourselves to the people we're supporting, beyond our roles as supporters and then being supported. This stuff takes you beyond your traditional roles, not in terms of what you do, but in terms of the space that you're standing in terms of kind of where you're coming from. And just natural compassion just flows, even in a situation where someone is violent or whatnot. And in your personal relationships, with your partners, with your kids, with your parents, all of that. This is what stops that basic PFP brain from dominating when you can be just present in that moment, right? So I catch myself, I calm myself, and those are the 4 that you're going to be working with, okay? Finally, how you will learn to break free of PFP prison. Become aware of the fact that you're here now. Become aware of what you're doing, saying, and feeling and thinking now. Become aware of your body sensations, feelings, and thought reactions, and then deliberately self-talk, kind of conscious, positive intentions, right? Which just come. And this is what starts to happen to you. Initially, we grow the skills to do this. You do this exercise, and you have the skill, and you intentionally kind of take yourself to activating your skills. But the big news, you do this enough practice, and you grow capacity. And it's the capacity that you want. Just like any great guitarist playing riffs on a guitar, they don't think their way through a G chord or an F chord. They just play, and they are played as that chord. We become not compassionate, we become compassion. And we become skilled in what we're doing because we're not having to think our way through it, right? just makes all the difference, right? So this third one then is we literally can upgrade our life drive. Listen to this. We're not just stuck with this chemical factor I've been talking to you about. What you're doing here is growing neuron cells in that medial prefrontal cortex, and I suspect other areas as well. We are growing our life drive, so that which reacts, like now, after we've been doing for 6 months or a year, is a different person. And we still don't necessarily know where the next thought's going to be. But that next thought, those billions of synapses that are now firing, they are a higher ordered synapse in terms of their content and their intention. You hear that? That's just such a big step that we can take for that number 3. And then number 4, this is really big. Those thoughts and feelings are not me. I mentioned this before. When you do this enough, you start to, even like when you're bebopping around and socializing, you get it. You start to feel inferior. And like this guy says here, you can't read it because it's too small maybe. But instead of saying, you know, I am afraid, or I am in fear, I'm not enough, this little guy says, in this moment, I am now having a thought that I'm not enough. And that's the difference between heaven and hell. When you can, with consciousness, say, there is a thought about something. There is a feeling of anger. It's a tight chest. It's, you know, like it's a yakety in the head is whatever. But there is, not I am angry. It's there is totally separates us to be able to bring our A game. When the average person, not trained, doesn't even know when they are angry until, you know, a long time later. But this brings us to the point where we look at those thoughts and feelings and say there is versus I am, right? So, and then finally, wisdom and authentic kindness. With sufficient time, focus, sensory long, we continue to build this situation. One of my teachers, from a mindful center, we can respond instead of react. Unconscious reactions create problems. Mindful responses bring peace. Whatever happens can be met with wisdom and compassion. So let me go through, and as a particular one, I just want to kind of end it with, of course, we have to practice, practice, practice. But I'd like to just talk to you about this graph, and I'm just going to, when we have no consciousness whatsoever, we get involved in a situation, and we don't even know we're there. We just duke it out with somebody, and driving home and wondering what's for supper. We didn't even know it could have been better. That's at the no end of this. The next step of growth is we're into duking out with someone, and we're having this argument, or we're doing whatever, our C game is playing. But after it's over, we catch ourselves saying, you know, that could have been better. I could have done better there. That's a significant growth, okay? Now, the next step is you're in the middle of this confrontation or whatever, in the middle of it. And in the middle of it, you catch yourself saying, this isn't going the way I'd like it to be going. I wish I could change this. Now, you're not sufficiently enough trained that kind of guns cocked and the trigger gets pulled. But you know in the moment that you could be doing better. Next level, that number 4, is in the middle of a situation. We can apply some of what we're talking about, this allowingness, this equanimity, this keeping the heart open inside. We can literally do that in the middle of this situation, start to play our better life drive, and it just, miracles happen there. And then finally, you will get to the point, and hey, I'm not going to snow you. It could take you 500 hours, which could be like 2 years, so 15 minutes a day. But heck, you're all going to be alive in 2 years, right? You could like have this or, you know, be normal or whatever. I'm going to read a couple of outcomes that can happen with what we're doing here. And then we'll just go for a soft close in a bit, but this will just take a few minutes. I've pulled together, this sounds kind of crazy, but I've pulled together something I call Peter's Repeaters, okay? It's like what I've taken out of my teachers and my experiences and whatnot. So 10 down to 1. Number 10, do our best and we rest with the rest. With the best of intentions and actions, I can only ever be an influencer of others in my life. Peter learned to lean into and let go of the illusion of controller of outcomes. I am responsible for right effort and action. Mindful, present, authentic, right action. Nature is responsible for outcomes. So I pedal and nature steers. Moment by present moment, I do my best and then I rest with the rest. Wherever we end up is where it's intended to be at that time. We must passionately work to change what must be changed and should be changed. Injustice, exclusion. But as we do our best, we learn to rest with the rest. Number 9, as the athlete completes an in-the-zone stroke, so too we can be motivated to change injustice without our self-righteous addiction to seeing good guys and bad guys. As our self-awareness life's mature, it gets harder and harder to tell what team any player's on. We talked about that this morning. You know, no good guys and bad guys after you see the chemical factory that people come from, right? So we just get it done with an open heart. Just no good guys, no bad guys. Just bringing that one into awareness is what comes. Then the next reason that we give to you to gain commitment to learn and practice BFit mindfulness goes even deeper to prove that unless you are conscious and aware, your life is virtually driven by autopilot. And I think I've made that pretty clear and don't apologize for it. It's the situation, you know. I think in a provable way, we've showed you that we are almost part of, as I say, this system whereby we're being owned by another reality, if you will, which is chemicals and all that we've talked about. So just remembering that. And to that, bring in remembering. We don't know what our next thought's going to be before we have it. We can't put them out. They don't reflect who we are. Just all of those problems that we have with thinking, just keep them in mind and then let that motivate you to do your practice. Number 7, ignorance is not bliss. What we do not know about thoughts and feelings can and will hurt us and hurt others. Ignorance is not bliss. So why then would you, a reasonably intelligent person, when looking at the poor lives that someone else might have and indicating that we are generally not effectively in control of our thoughts, like we just said, one of our most essential life skills, would you not work to get control of that thinkable problem? Would we not saying that don't go for ignorance, go for this deeper insights to see how we can get control of those thoughts that are come out? Change the life drive. We can literally do that, right? And then you will learn to know that this is a part of my most recent poem. We've been at it likely 3 years, this poem. The first 4 lines goes like this. There is often a hidden just right and things that appear all wrong. As we awaken, we trust more into this sacred song. And we could go on with different stanzas in that. But this consciousness that we're looking at really brings us where we start to see that, okay, looks like it's awful, but let's just settle down. Let's do our best to clean it up. Let's also have some faith that, often this happens, it looks awful. Then a year from now, if that hadn't happened, this good thing would have happened. And it's a really big deck we're playing with, and just to honor it with, do our best and rest with the rest is really a watchword that we're giving you. Number 6, authenticity with others. It's not so much a feeling state as it is simply the experience of being consciously present, moment after present allowing moment. And one tangible, measurable manifestation of fuller consciousness is that feelings and thoughts move across this emotional hijack continuum from anger to indifference, and then to peace, and finally, with fuller consciousness, to authentic concern, caring, and sadness for the other person's suffering. This caring is, even at the moment they are most trying to hurt us. At this time, body sensations, feelings, and thoughts will still likely be somewhat activated in fight, flight, and freeze. Okay. But simultaneously, however, a part of our conscious talk is saying, I so wish I could help that person not to suffer so much. Literally, this starts to happen because you know the predicament. As this is happening, the heart is experiencing an openness for which the average mindless person has no emotional frame of reference. Looking at what we're talking about here. We just don't have a frame of reference because it hasn't come from our inherited survival nature. So at the same time, because we're more conscious, we can work passionately and optimally to change situations that should be changed. This change continuum could be from being silent to extremely active as a peace advocate. And number 5, there appears to us to be an experience of growing and healing into wholeness that only pain seems to be awakened. I haven't talked about pain today, but there is some really merit in saying that some of what life is about certainly is painful, but it doesn't have to be negative. We teach in mindfulness that suffering equals pain times resistance. And we're going to have pain. Pain's inevitable. But suffering can be more optional. It really can be. And we have to learn how to soften our resistance in situations, which the mindfulness and equanimity does. That's what drops the resistance out of the formula. And that's what drops our suffering then. So the pains can be inevitable. So it seems that as we skillfully notice the qualities of physical and emotional pain and allow them to spread and change, just like you did in that little exercise, intensify and weaken, we simultaneously also evolve our innate equanimity that for now can manifest as capacity for healing, tolerance, forgiveness, unconditional connecting with others. Number 4, honor energy patterns. This is big. Honor energy patterns. Our energy is always on the move. Expanding, contracting. I must know my baseline of energy patterns, know how it changes with food, sleep, certain people, decision-making, physical exhaustion, etc. Really important to bring that into awareness, right? We can temporarily somewhat override the pattern, but our internal and external skills, behaviors, and intentions can still be compromised. So we don't want to just be overriding. When we've got low energy, we want to make sure that we're not trying to, do things that are, that really take a lot of our energies and the things like that. So just holding that makes a lot of sense. And then next, closed heart, down to number 2 here. To the extent that our heart is closed, in any human intention, decision, or action, know that our thoughts, plans, and behaviors must at best be less than optimal, or worse, harmful, leading to future suffering for us and for others. Authentic forgiveness is essential. When hurt by another, stop the hurting and immediately take care of yourself by forgiving them, at least intending to forgive them. Not forgiving someone means that you do not understand the human predicament, and you don't. That may sound weird to someone. I'm going to take care of myself by forgiving someone that's just done whatever with me? Yeah, you are. Why? Because when you hold that resentment, that cortisol runs in you 24/7, and it does the damage that I talked about today. It impedes your other relationships. If you think that you can hold a grudge, a resentment, even an anger towards someone, and that doesn't impact your other relationships, you do not understand your mind. The mind-body does not work like that. We're holding a negativity, then we want to make sure that we work through that as best we can, even if you just intend forgiveness. You'll never forget, maybe. Never's a long time, but it's not about forgetting. It's just learning how to open the heart through what we're doing. You do that exercise and you bring in, if you go on my website, we're going to see the Heart of Compassion exercise. It's amazing. You do 2 or 3 of those and you start to just cross over the line where, okay, I see that we don't have bad guys and good guys. I see that person doing what they're doing is, because of, of the chemical factory and all of that. So as our awareness, skills, and capacity mature, the armor comes down from around our heart. At the first experience of catching, there is anger, versus our typical subjective experience of I am anger, right? And finally, just a little 1-line, 2-liners here. Know thyself. Awe the sacred evidence of knowing self so deep, anger with an open heart, now awaken from the sleep. Aware and allowing conflict, loving presence, each moment new. To all who hurt and hate forgiven, for they know not what they do. And finally, number 1, when we become aware of being here now, our thoughts and feelings are expressed like any other sense store. They are not us. They are like other senses, smell, touch, taste. As a part of our awareness, they don't own us. It's like if we taste something that's awful, we don't say, I am an awful taste. We say, there is an awful taste. So I am warmed about it because this is worry. So it's not that I am worried, it's there is worry. It's not I am angry, there is anger. I am not enough. No, that's not right. There is thoughts and feelings of not enoughness. And you literally start to grow and build that way. This becomes who you are. Let me finish with one of my favorite little stories from one of my teachers long ago. This is such a sweet little story. You might say I'm the gatekeeper here. The first person who meets people when they come in for help. My friends at work, they call up and say, St. Peter? I say, he's not here. Can I take a message? Anyhow, family service is the name of our department. People come in. I direct them to the appropriate office, food, shelter, child protection, welfare, legal, your basics. My job is to get a sense of who someone is and then find the right place for them. It's not simple. For a little time, I found this an uncomfortable assignment. I don't like sizing up someone according to their problems. It may help them get to the right office, but it also reduces them somehow. Reduces me too. I'll find myself resisting this way of going about things. But I had an experience once that changed my way of thinking about it. There was this woman who was living on the street when I used to pass on my way to the bus. She was homeless, alcoholic. Later, it developed that she had a cancer diagnosis. For some reason, I decided to take up with her. I liked her smile. Enough of sending everyone everywhere else. I knew the whole maze of social services. I'd take her around to the clinics myself. Shelters, Medicare, whatever. I guess I wanted to know I could help at least one person. She was very uncomplaining, Viola. She was willing, even funny about it. Well, Maria, she said, what are you going to do for me today? Oh, the scenes we had. They called me from a women's shelter once. Somehow she brought in 3 pips of a Seagram 7 that night and all had gotten drunk. I was against the rules and I had to take her out. You told me you'd be good. I said, you were warm there. She said, well, we got warmer. Or I set her up with a counselor once. After a while, he caught logged and said, look, she shows up irregularly. She always wants to argue with me when she does. What's she here for anyway? And I'd tell Viola, and she'd say, sure, I love to argue with these people. He wants to talk about my childhood all the time, but he doesn't even remember what childhood was like for him. Trust me, Marie. And I did. I'd have to laugh. She was so insightful and honest. Oh, I really did love her, that one. I really did. But the problems went on for months. Nothing seemed to work. She kept going back to the street, drinking, getting sicker, and all the rest. The more helpless I felt, the more I just loved her. What else could I do? And I'd try again. Look, Viola, I'd say. Look where, Maria, she'd say, deeply replying. I became kind of a joke. Look where. She moved to a park near my house, and there she started to really go downhill. One evening, I went to see her, and she was sitting under a tree. She looked awful. I had this powerful feeling that she was getting very close to death. So I went through everything with her one more time. Her drinking, her health, her eating, her shelter. She could help. She could come. I'd live with me. It had got that far. She just listened and finally said, you know, dear, there's nothing more you can do for me. There's nothing you can do. And I saw she was right. I just saw that. And I heard this big sigh, just let go. About then, it started raining lightly. I finally said, well, it's getting late. Let's go and grab a coffee. She said, you go, Maria. I'll be all right here. I said, yeah, well, I'll see you later then. But somehow, it felt like we both knew I wouldn't. I went to the bus, and I was crying on the bus. I felt just brokenhearted. I felt there was something else. I didn't know what. Then this thought came to me that she was out there alone in the rain. Just that. So I got off the bus and took the other bus back and went into the park with a newspaper on my head. I must have looked pretty funny. She was under the tree. She looked up at me, and I sat down, and she said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Nothing, really. I just felt like being with you a little more." She said, "Okay." So we sat in the rain. There we were. It was relatively dry because this was a big sycamore tree. I told her about how my father taught me to identify trees by their bark and how I love trees and nature and felt happiest there. She told me about the desert. She had used to live in Arizona. Her favorite place was the desert. It was so peaceful there. We watched the rain. We watched how the squirrels ran around and the last few people scurrying out. We watched how the park looked with no one in it. Some birds, a stray dog, some mist beginning to appear. And I finally felt at peace. And we were both at peace. And we stayed silent a long time. I felt such love. She walked me to the bus. She said, "Thanks." I said, "For what?" She said, "For nothing." We laughed. "You've been very good to me," she added. We were teary. We hugged. Then I got on the bus and we waved goodbye. I never saw her again. I'll always feel connected to her. I finish with that because that's really what we're all being about, right? It's being that supporter, however we are, but beyond our roles of them being supported and us being supporter, there's a place, I even call it a sacred place. It's a place that we can touch, where it's not what we give. It's just being connected with someone. I call it conscious connecting. The mind wants to do its scattered trip about this and that and judging all this. The more of this work we do, we can also bring this place of centeredness, this place of just being open to what's happening, doing our best with all the great supports we know about and in our relationships with kids and parents and all that, doing the best to help out, but always hold on to a part of who you are that is just that place that I call usness, where it's not separate self, you, me. There's just an usness. There's just such a closeness that it's indescribable and can't even be defined. And that's what comes when we remain present, when we're not driven by, as we talk about, this factory, chemical factory. But there is a place in every one of us that we can reach here. And the good news is it doesn't take even hundreds of hours of work. Look at, the understanding we gave you, the management and the self-awareness, and it can be there. And then it turns out to be, this is so cool, it turns out to be what I call the dual path. Because we find ourselves helping other people, either professionally or in our families or our neighborhood or wherever. We find ourselves helping. But in order for us to be the best helper we can be, we grow ourselves. We are motivated to grow, to be better. So it's like one hand washing the other, Like it's just, okay, so I want to be better for this person, so I'm going to do a little bit more in terms of mindfulness or whatever else. And it just starts to become this dual path where it just serves both of us. And it comes from a place of just being aware and strong intentions, just very strong intentions, okay? So I think that's about all I've got for you today. I've certainly enjoyed hanging out with you. Your energy's fantastic. If you want any more information on what we do, we've got our website there. And just thanks for coming out today and be so positive in what you're doing. It's just been an incredible group, and I've worked with a lot of groups, so thank you all very much, okay?